Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome and thank you for joining us on this fine Tuesday evening for another Michael's virtual classroom. My name is Bianca from YourInspirations.com, and I'm here with your host today, Mary Beth Temple from Hooked for Life. This evening, Mary Beth is going to be teaching us how to expand our sewing skills with patches. So you'll be learning how to use visible mending techniques to both repair and add some personality to your clothes. I will be in the chat as well, helping you answer any questions you may have. So don't be shy. And with that all being said, I will pass it over to Mary Beth to get started.
Hi guys, and welcome. I hope we have a lot of people here from our beginning sewing classes that we have been doing here on the Michael's National platform. So tonight we're going to talk about visible mending and, as Bianca said, adding some personality to your clothing. Now, sometimes we have a patch because something's torn and we need to fix it, but sometimes we're just adding a little zhuzh. So tonight it's really more of an art than a science. So we're going to have a very chill evening. You can stitch along with me if you like, but if not, you can just watch and see some of the different techniques that we're doing. And now, Lindsay, if we could go over to the tabletop camera, I'm going to get started. Thank you. All right, let's get a little light on the subject. And hit the magic button. So there are several different patches and variations that we have on this sample that we got from our good friends at Coats and Clark. So you can see something like this, where coordinating thread was used and the stitch pattern is interesting. Now, a lot of people say to me, why don't I just want to use the iron-on patches? Here's the thing, particularly with jeans and denim and other types of cotton fabrics, fabrics are breathing and they move around. The thing that I personally don't like about the iron-on patches is that the glue gets into the fabric and it becomes not as flexible as it might have been. I also think some of the iron-on patches are pretty boring. They're difficult to sew through because of that adhesive layer. It's really hard to get your needle through. And then lastly, if you change your mind and you want to take one of these patches off, or change how you have done the repair, if you're using one of our products like button and craft thread or anchor floss or even all-purpose thread, it's super easy to clip that off and get rid of it, and you can change your mind about how things go. Whereas I feel like once you have gone in there aggressively with an iron-on patch and an iron, you're pretty stuck with the results. There's not a whole lot that you can do. So let's talk for a minute about some of the supplies that we have. When I can, I like to use an embroidery hoop. Now, obviously, if I'm doing a kid's item, you know, a narrow part of a pair of jeans or something like that, I'm not going to be able to get an embroidery hoop in there. But if I can, I like to use it because it keeps the fabric taut and it keeps the patch from drawing in when I am sewing. So if you can find a little embroidery hoop at Michael's, I recommend that you have one for places where you can. Now tonight, we're going to primarily be working with button and craft thread. A couple of reasons. One is the glacé coating on Coats and Clark button and craft thread makes it really a joy to hand sew with. It is less likely to tangle when you're hand sewing. Now you can't use it in a machine, but we're not machine sewing tonight anyway. We're going to hand sew. So it's a tiny bit thicker than our all-purpose product. You can use the all-purpose thread. We did use it on a couple of patches on this sample that I showed you earlier, but tonight I'm going to be focusing on button and craft. Now, a lot of people will recommend that you use embroidery floss. And of course we have anchor floss at Michael's. And here's just a strand of that. And there, again, are some instances that I'm going to show you where embroidery floss works great because it's super thick, it's super soft, and it comes in a gazillion colors. That said, if I'm going to work on a blouse or a shirt or a pair of trousers or a skirt or an apron that I'm going to throw in the wash a lot of times, I feel like the button and craft thread is sturdier and is going to last a little longer. But your choices at Michael's, we have the anchor floss, we have the button and craft thread, and that's on the green spool, the sort of turquoisey color. And then as always, we have our dual duty XP, the all-purpose thread, which comes on the white spool. Again, as I go through and we talk about the different samples, I'll show you different instances where you might want to use different products. The next thing you're going to need are some needles. Now, honestly, for these types of projects, I use embroidery needles instead of sharps. And there's two reasons for that. One is they tend to be a little bit longer, which I like when I'm doing some fancy stitching. And the second is the eye is a little bit bigger on the embroidery needles than it is on a sharp. A sharp is a great needle to use when I'm using the dual duty XP, but for button and craft or for embroidery floss, I like to use the embroidery needles. Just because the eye is bigger, it's going to fight with me less. You can use whatever kind of needles you have, but I would avoid tapestry needles because they're too blunt. You want something with a good sharp point on there, so you can use embroidery needles, sharps, or quilting or betweens. But you want something with a good sharp point because we want to be able to pierce the fabric. Always, 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 I like the needle threaders. You can thread your own needles, and so many of us were taught to do that. But honestly, the older I get, the more likely I am to use these needle threaders. We have them in a 3-pack also at Michael's, and so they're super easy to grab, and I find them really handy to have around. So I'm going to use this sort of cream color. Oh, I forgot the most important part. Oh my goodness. Fabric. At Michael's, we have tons and tons of fat quarters. There is something that will go with any sort of mood that you might have. And the difference between a fat quarter and a 1/4 yard of fabric is if I go to the store and I order a 1/4 yard of fabric, I'm probably going to get a piece that's about 45 inches wide, maybe 44, and a 1/4 yard, of course, is 9 inches. So I'm going to get a piece that's 44 inches wide by 9 inches, which is not particularly useful in a lot of things that I want to do in a lot of projects. If I get a fat quarter, so far as square inches goes, it's still a 1/4 yard, but the yard is laid out this way and cut in quarters. So my piece is going to be 18 inches tall, which is half a yard, and then half of the width of the fabric, or about 21 inches. Sometimes they're a little bigger, but we tell you it'll be 18 by 21. So I picked this one out today. One, it goes with the jeans that I want to work on camera. And two, I just, the idea of some of these little critters sort of peeking out, I just love. So why are we calling it visible mending? Because honestly, in the olden days, I remember my mother, putting a patch on something that I had torn and trying to hide it. And it's never going to be 100% gone, right? So why not embrace it? So I'm going to use my my button and craft thread. One of the cool things about the newer packaging, a lot of us remember the thread spools with the nicks in the side, and you had to kind of peel the end off from under the thing. The new spools have these snap caps, so you can just pop the end off. Now I had this out earlier. Let's see, hang on. Let's see if I have one I haven't opened yet. I haven't opened this one yet, this red one. So you can pop up your snap cap, grab your end and unwind it, cut off a thread that's as long as you need it to be. And then when you're done, you can just wrap it back up, snap your cap closed, put it wherever you keep your thread. And for those of you who remember the butter cookie tin that your grandmother had with 900 spools of thread in there, and then they all got tangled up, because you can trim your thread and then just put it right under the snap cap. That doesn't happen anymore. It keeps the thread nice and neat and from unwinding. So I suspect I have used this beige before, and that's why it didn't come right out. So I like to work with a piece about 30 to 36 inches, but the less experience you have, the shorter you should cut your thread, to be honest. You don't want to go crazy with a long piece of thread if you're not used to it. So once again, here's my cut end of my thread. I'm going to slide it under my snap cap, close it. Now it's not going anywhere. So I have to tell you, these snap caps are the coolest invention. I love them. And that has nothing to do with product placement and everything to do with I tend to make a mess. So here's my needle threader. So I'm going to take the pointy part and I'm going to stick it in the hole of the needle and push it all the way through, and it's going to bend so it goes all the way through. Now, instead of trying to fuss and get my cut end through the eye of the needle, I just have to get it through that metal loop, pull it up a little, and give it a little tug, and it's going to come all the way through. So now my needle is threaded. Now I'm only going to use one strand of the button and craft. Again, it's pretty sturdy. And if you have questions about when to use one strand, when to use two strand, I do highly recommend you go to Michael's and check out our Hand Sewing 101 classes, because we talk about that a lot. But I think one strand is enough for visible mending and two is overkill. So again, a lot of us were told to like lick the end of the thread and tie an overhand knot, and that is very tedious. So what I like to do, so I'm going to take this little cut edge, this little short edge, I'm going to wrap it over my finger. Now watch, I'm going to use my thumb to twist, 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 twist. Now I'm going to pull that down. And there's my knot. I have a great big knot that's not going to pull through. When you tie an overhand knot and then you try and tie another overhand knot and maybe another one to get a big enough knot that it's not going to pull through your work, it's hard to get those overhand knots to lay up on top of each other. So that little twisty trick is super helpful. So I am going to grab my embroidery hoop. I'm going to use the screw to make it nice and loose. And I did check, these are these trousers are sort of teenager sized. This is a size 4 adult. And I did check earlier and I did not have any trouble getting the small hoop in. So I'm going to go ahead and use it. Also, I know I talk about this if you've taken other classes with me. Because of where the camera is, I tend to do projects at a really weird angle. So it's very good for me to have a hoop to hold on to. So now that I have placed the inner ring inside the outer ring, I'm going to use that screw and tighten it up. Just as tight as it will go. And that'll keep that fabric in there and keep my fabric laying flat and keep me from sewing patches that pucker, because we don't want puckery patches.
Mary Beth.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask.
Amazing. Before you head too far into the section, we're just hoping you could show us the twisty trick again. I think it's
we're excited about the twisty trick.
I'm already learning a lot.
Okay, let's do the twisty trick again. I'm gonna cut off the one I already did. You will notice, and again, I've said this in other classes, I always have to lick my index finger. It's weird. It's a habit. So here's my cut end, right? There it is on my finger. I'm going to make a loop, and it's like a little X. You see that? So now I'm going to use my thumb and go twisty, twisty, twisty. I made that a little tight. So all I'm doing is twisting those threads together towards my fingernail. You see it? I don't know how close we can get without autofocus losing its mind. And when I've got a few in there, I'm going to pull that loop down. Now you can see this one made a little extra loop. Sometimes it happens. You also saw I just gave it a little tug, and I can always trim the excess off. But this gives me a sizable knot. And all of my knot is in the same place. It's not, again, like trying to do 18 overhand knots in the same spot, because you will never get them in the same spot twice. It never happens. Anything else, Bianca, before I move on?
No, I think that's it. Yeah. Love seeing tangles working in our favor for once.
All right. So because I want to show a bunch of different techniques, I'm not going to try and, I mean, literally, I just bought these at Target a couple of hours ago. I'm not going to try and cover this amount of madness because again, I'm showing you techniques. I'm not actually patching these jeans that they ripped on purpose. I just want to show you some techniques of different ways to do this. So the first choice you want to make is, do I want the patch on top of the ripped area, or do I want it underneath? Because it's two different looks. Now, for something like this, it has little faces and, you know, the little deer and the little hedgehogs and whatnot. I'm going to put it on top because I think that's something that we're most likely to do. But particularly for florals and stuff like that, you can get a really cool look by putting them underneath and just letting some of the color pop through. But for today, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this little bear. So when you're cutting your patch, first off, it doesn't have to be square. A lot of us, again, because this is visible mending, we're adding to the look of our piece, not just fixing an unintended hole. So square is common, but it's not the only way to go. If you look at our sample over here, we have a hexagon. There's sort of an arrow. Let's see if I can find it. On the back, we have a heart. We have this little sort of arrow shaped guy. You don't have to just make a square, but for the purposes of today, I'm going to. You also want to make sure you don't want to be stitching right up against the edge of your tear, because what's going to happen as you sew, this is going to get looser and looser and looser, because remember, it's not 100% stable because it's torn, it's ripped. So you want to be sewing 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch away from the outer section. So again, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to do a section about this big. When we get to there, we're not going crazy, but I want to make sure that my guy is covered. Now I'm going to use a pin or 3 until I get it where I want it to be. And don't forget, it's better to cut too big than too small, because if it's too big and you have too much flapping on the outside, you can always go back and trim it down a little bit. But if it's too small, it's too small and it's not going to help. So I'm just going to use these. I like the flower head pins because I always lose my pins. I run a cosplay team, and one of my young models last year bought me a selection of magnetic pin cushions for Christmas because she got tired of always finding my pins on the floor. But I am a person who throws pins on the floor. So I really like these with the big head because it helps me see what I'm doing. And I'm actually, I know we just had the beige up, but I think I'm going to switch to this darker color that I had preloaded because I think it will be easier for you to see. The magic of video, I had preloaded some needles before we got started. So the first style of patch we're going to do, I'm looking to see if I have one on this cute coat. I'm just going to do the stitches basically in lines, something like this. So once again, if you haven't seen that original video on how to sew, this is a running stitch. It's the first thing that we learned in those other videos. So it's a very simple way to get started. Hang on one second. I'm just trying to get my other hand in a good place so I can see what I'm doing. And before I get too far, I think I'm going to undo the top of the trousers so I can get in there. There we go. I think we're going to start upside down. I think that'd be easier for you to see. So I'm going to come up from the back, going through all the layers, and I'm using my finger to make sure that I'm not too close to one of this ripped edges. I want to start, you know, let's say over here. Because I don't want to be right where that rip is, right? We talked about that. So we're going to do a simple running stitch. So I'm going to go down maybe 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch and pull it through. And then I'm going to come up. You want to try and make them as equal as you can. And obviously it's one of those things, the more you do it, the more practice you get, the more consistent you will be. I've been sewing professionally for a very, very long time. So even with my awkward camera angle, I tend to be pretty consistent. Consistency is not something you're going to have the first time you thread a needle, right? So don't get excited. We're not going crazy. So I'm just going to make a line of running stitches till I get to the bottom of my patch. Now you want to give some tension on that thread. You want the thread to lay flat up against your garment, but you don't want to pull it too tight, because if you pull it too tight, again, it's going to scrunch in, it's going to look puckery, and it's not going to be super comfortable to wear. Now I just said how straight I go, and now I'm going crooked. I think I'm going to get that pin out of the way now that my fabric's laying where I want it to. Just trying to make it so you can see it. This is a really weird angle. You can also see, and I'm sure I'm about to jinx it, but you can also see the button and craft thread, because of the coating, comes through pretty easily, and you're not likely to snag it. It's that glacé coating that's on it makes it just perfect for hand sewing. You wouldn't want to try and get it in your sewing machine. That would be a mess. But for hand sewing, this is definitely the way to go, particularly if you're a newer sewist. So in the interest of us living our lives, moving on, that's as far down as I'm going to go. I keep getting caught on that jeans button. So now I'm going to go just a little bit over and do that same stitch. It's just a running stitch, down and up, down and up, down and up. And so for this kind of a patch, I'm just going to make rows and rows of running stitch. To keep my patch in place. I had somebody say this would make a great ASMR video. So you can just hear the thread going in and out of the embroidery hoop. Once you get the hang of this, you can absolutely go crazy. You could do all different colors. Maybe you wanted to do more than one color of your running stitch. Maybe you wanted to change color every 3 or 4 rows. Nothing wrong with that. This is your creative pursuit. So you can do it however you would like to do it. So now we're coming to the point where some of this is happening. I'm sewing over that ripped stuff where the weft thread is missing. That's okay. If you start on a really stable piece of fabric, then it almost doesn't matter anymore where your sewing happens. You're just going to go back and forth and back and forth. You're essentially melding the new fabric to the old fabric. This is also very relaxing. I'm really in the zone here. It's kind of funny. So there's my first 2 rows of running stitch. And again, if you look at this heart-shaped patch or this guy up here, you can see the stitches line up with each other and the spaces line up with each other. So the next thing to learn when you've learned this stitch, which again, this stitch is the basis of almost all hand sewing. A cool way to get a different look without having to learn another stitch. Now, instead of lining my stitches up next to each other, maybe I want to line up a stitch with the space, sort of stagger them a little bit. So when I did my first 2 rows, I had those stitches next to each other, but now, just to be interesting, I'm going to put a stitch where a stitch wasn't. I'm going to put a stitch where the space was on the previous row. So again, I haven't learned any new stitches. I'm doing the one stitch that I already know, but I'm giving it a different visual effect. So I noticed, I'm just saying this out of habit, I noticed that my tail was getting a little short here while I'm pulling. So I'm just gonna give that a little tug, give myself a little bit shorter piece to work with, just so I don't get so tangled. Bianca, do we have any questions?
I'm actually wondering if you have any tips for how long your thread should be for doing something like this.
I cut mine 30 to 32 inches, but again, I'm a somewhat more experienced sewist. I recommend at least 24 inches. You don't want it so short that you're having to tie off and start a new thread every, 5 minutes.
Right.
But I think about 30 inches is probably optimal. As you learn, you will get into more of a rhythm of, what works best for you. I'm one of those people, I measure from my fingertip to my nose. And that's how I do mine. So now when I do the next row, I'm going to go back and match my stitches to the row before. So I'm going to do my stitches in my spaces again. So now I'm coming down here. Now I'm going to show you just a little trick. When you have the hoop like this and you've got your hand underneath and there's plenty of room, I'm going to cheat a little bit. So now I brought my thread up. I'm going to go down and then I'm going to come right up. And give that a tug and let it come all the way through. It just goes a tiny bit faster, but you want to practice just going up and down first. And then you can get clever and do two passes at a time. And once again, this is something that you can do easily with the button and craft thread because of the coating. So say I put my needle down and using my other hand, I'm going to put it right back up. Oh, got a little twisty there. See, that's what I get for trying to be slick. If you get a knot in your thread, the last thing you want to do is pull. You don't want to tug on it. Pull it back out and see if you can sort of tease the layers apart. Generally speaking, you're not going to have made an overhand knot, because your needle didn't go through an open loop. So usually 9 times out of 10, you can sort of tease the little twisty part apart. So see, there was my 2 rows of running stitch that were perfectly parallel. And now I'm sort of doing this staggered. Another stitch you might want to do now to do this one. Again, I would practice that running stitch first, because once you're nice and consistent with that, doing the other kinds of stitches is easy. But another one that we did, I'm going to get this out of the way because we don't need it. Another one we did on the jacket was sort of an angled stitch. It's a half cross. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to move over a little so you can see some coming up. Now to do this one, you want to make sure your fabric's in your hoop, but not super tight, because you need it to have a little bit of play. So now I'm coming up on an angle, down, and then up right next to where I'm going down. Up on an angle. So down, I'm going up and to the right. So I'm going up in height, down through the fabric, and coming up to the left of it. So this is a half cross stitch. But you see, I have to have a little bit of play in the hoop. If it's too tight, I can't scoop. This button is going to be the death of me. I'm just saying. And you want to make sure you don't pull too tight, because it's really easy to sort of pull this one out of shape. All right, I'm getting a little crooked because I'm rushing, but I'm trying to get to the end of the row because I have more things I want to show you. So there's my row of half crosses, and we're going to pretend that I didn't make that one too wide. And I believe, let me see, I believe we have a patch with some half crosses on it, if I can find it. It's this guy, kind of hard to see, but you see them? See those little half cross stitches right there in the pink? Now, just briefly, if I wanted to finish my cross stitches, I can just go back through the stitches where I had worked previously. But a half cross is totally cool by itself. You don't have to finish and make them crosses. But if I wanted to, you can see now I'm going down and I'm going in the same hole that I used before. Sloppy though it may have been. Down in the same spot, up in the same spot. It doesn't have to be exactly the same spot. Close enough is close enough. So this would finish up and give me crosses, but half crosses are cool on their own. You don't have to finish and do crosses if you're not in the mood. But once you get your half cross in and all laid out, then finishing them is super easy, because you already know exactly where you're going to put your needle. So the next thing I want to talk about is finishing off your thread. Now, I would normally have done this on the, well, I don't know. Let's see if I can do it where you can see it. Yeah, I guess that's okay. I normally do just 3, I call them tacks, 3 little tack stitches. You don't want it to show through on the front. Just grab a couple threads and I go 1, 2, 3. Now, 3 is not a magic number. It is not a rule. It is not a law. You can do 2, you can do 6, you can do 25. but 3 is what I normally do. I'll put 1 more in for good luck. Now we've had, again, I hate to keep referencing the beginner sewing classes, but they've been really interesting. If I'm trimming my threads in a section where they will not be seen, I like to leave a little bit of thread before I cut, just a little bit. And I have had many people say, my grandmother told me to cut as close as I can. And the reason I don't recommend that, let's see if I can make it happen. If I cut super, super close, let's see if I can do it. I'm not sure this is going to work, but you'll get my drift. If I cut super, super close, then that cut edge does not have far to go to unpull. Of course, I made that not so nice, it's not going to do it. My point is, if the cut edge is right next to the knot, the cut edge can slip through the knot more easily. If you give it a 1/16 or 1/8 of an inch, it has to work harder to come undone. So I hate to argue with anybody's grandmother. And if it's a situation where you're going to see that knot, then yes, cut as close as you can. But I always like to leave just the least little bit because it's just less likely to come undone. Do we have any more questions, Bianca? Because I want to move on to a different technique entirely.
Yeah, I think that would be great. I think we're all following along here.
All right. So let me load up another needle. I did not use my needle threader because the thread gods were with me today. Here, let's do that. Let's do that knot one more time. There's my cut end. There's my little X. Twist, twist, twist. Pull it down. Knot. So another thing you can do when you're patching this kind of work is not go with a patch and use the threads that are already there to sort of create new fabric. And there's 2 different ways we're going to talk about to do that. So I'm loosening up my hoop so I can take it off. And I'm going to move it down. I'm just going to move it down here again for the sake of efficiency. I'm just going to move it down here a little bit. And to remember, once you get your fabric in there, on these plastic hoops, you can really feel it click. On some of our other products, there's not a ridge, but on these plastic hoops, there's a ridge in there and you can feel when they're in the right place. Oh my goodness, I lost my needle. I hate when that happens. All right, let's try another one. And actually, I rethought my position. I think I'm going to do 2 strands for this one just to be interesting. Just grab another needle off my pin cushion. So in this case, I'm going to knot 2 strands together because we're going to do sort of a weaving thing. And I did cut the thread fairly long, longer than that 30 inches we recommended before, because I'm using a double length of thread. I had to cut it a little longer because I'm sort of folding it in half. And there I did my twisty thing again. So in this kind of an instance, and again, for this, I could use embroidery floss. I could use anchor embroidery floss, or I could use the button and craft thread like we are using. But what I'm going to do here, if I could get my hand in the right place, it's like puppets over here, y'all. So when you get a woven fabric, no matter what the woven fabric is, the thread that goes side to side is your weft. The thread that goes north and south is your warp. So in this case, I've got these threads are already here. My weft threads are here. It's my warp threads that are gone. So I can bring my needle up from the back. And again, I would have done it neater, except I'm trying to rush just a little bit. And in this case, instead of adding fabric, I'm essentially going to reweave the fabric that's already here because I have some of it here. Now, am I going to go in and out, in and out, in and out under every single thread? No, because it would take me the rest of my natural life. And again, I'm interested in visible and interesting. I'm not necessarily trying to act like this patch does not exist, right? It doesn't bother me. I'm trying to make it look pretty. So I'm only going up to here because I have some fabric here that's still existing that I can, anchor. So I'm going to go down, and then I'm going to try and go in and out of the same groups of threads that I already had. But if I went over it before, I'm going to go under it. And if I went under it before, I'm going to go over it. Did you ever weave potholder looms in Scouts, in Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts, or in kindergarten? Or my mother, I don't know why she was into potholders, but everybody in my family learned to weave on a potholder loom when they were small people. I still remember it, a beautiful red metal potholder loom that I'm sure nobody would be allowed to have anymore because it was metal. I think they're all plastic now. But it's that same over under pattern that you would do if you were weaving on a loom of any kind, whether it's a potholder loom or a regular loom. And of course it's twisting on me today, just because I'm trying to rush. See if I can get a tiny bit closer. So where I'm going under threads that I went over before. Could you go in and out every single thread? Yes, you could. It would be so very time consuming. But if you had a really interesting color of floss or thread and you had the time and you were into it, you could absolutely do that. But that's not what I'm after today.
So Annie is wondering, are you doing this weaving only where there is no patch or backing fabric?
I am, yes. Now, could I put a patch behind it? Yes, I could. If I was worried about durability, I absolutely would. Does that make sense? I could put a patch behind this, stitch around the outside. But if I'm weaving instead of sewing, I'm not going through whatever. If I had a patch behind it, I am not at this point going through that fabric, right? Because I'm just using the strands that are already there.
Right. And Diane and Christina in the chat are picking up the similarities here to darning.
Yes, very similar to darning. That is a really super good point. And again, you can see now that I've got my pattern set, I don't have to go up and down, up and down, up and down. I can go under, down and up a couple times with the needle. And again, remember we were talking about how I like the embroidery needles for this kind of work because it's longer. That is why I can use that needle to sort of do the beginning of a couple different stitches at the same time. Again, when I'm up here and I'm anchoring to fabric, I don't want to be right near the end because that is something that could fray in wearing or in the washing or whatever. You want to get up to where the fabric is stable and use that to anchor. So you see what I mean about how I'm sort of grabbing a couple stitches at a time.
And did you anchor with a knot at the beginning?
I did anchor with a knot at the beginning and I came up, you can see it way down here because I didn't want it to, again, pulled through any fray. So I'm going to go back to my sample here. Now, this is a cool one because it was such a small little hole. What they did, instead of anchoring at the beginning, they used, it looks like 4 strands of embroidery floss, and they left a long tail on either side, tied them into an overhand knot, and cut into a shorter tail. So that, I think that's a really cool treatment and would go really fast because you're not tying off or knotting or anything like that. You're just running through some strands, running through some strands, running through some strands, running through some strands, taking those ends tying it into overhand and cutting it. So I thought that was a really interesting treatment. And then over here, you can see it done with a contrasting color. So it's a little more interesting. And here they really went to town and used two different colors. They used both the beige and the peach up here. And in this case, they sort of left the ends hanging. Now, again, something like this is a denim jacket. I'm not going to wash this jacket every single time I wear it, correct? I'm going to wash it infrequently. So a treatment like this, I think you could get away with. If it was an item I was going to toss into the washing machine fairly frequently, I would make sure that there was some kind of a knot or anchor because I wouldn't want all my hard work to come undone. The last sort of treatment that, let's see if I can find it, that I wanted to show you that, again, I just think it's super interesting, is this one. So in this case, we had all those weft threads, right, that were there, and they literally cut strips of fabric and wove them in and out. In addition to the button and craft thread or the anchor embroidery floss. So I'm going to talk about that just very briefly. I just thought it was a really fascinating treatment and one that I have not seen a bunch of times. So to do that, you could do it with ribbon too. Oh man, I just thought of that. I bet that would be really cool with ribbon. So you can just cut a little strip, maybe 3/8 to 1/2 inch. Now, this is another one of those things in our model that they sent me. It doesn't look anchored to me, but I would take a little tack stitch in this and anchor it just because I wouldn't want it to come out. But I could use as many of these little strips as I wanted to sort of fill in. Now, in that case, I think instead of my cute little bear and my cute little fox and hedgehog stuff, I might do something that's more colorful and just let the color pop sort of peep through, if that makes sense. But this would also, I know they have lots of ribbons at Michael's, especially in the floral department. I think this would be really cool to do with ribbon as well. Now, the very last thing, I'm just looking at my clock here. One of the very last things that I want to talk about is your edges. Now, these things are going to fray. The edge of your patch is going to fray. The edge of your little strips is going to fray. That's okay. By the time it gets to the point where you can't use it anymore, probably the piece will have worn out to the point that you don't want to use it anymore either. Again, I think one of the interesting parts of this technique is letting the fabric do what it will. Let those edges do what they will. Don't worry about folding over edges and making neat hems and stuff like that. Really just kind of go to town with all the interesting things that you have at your hand. And also, if you do sewing or quilting, or you know somebody who sews or quilts, it's a great use for scraps. All of us people who sew a lot have buckets and buckets of scraps. We would be happy to share them with you and get some of them out of our house. So again, for this one, just out of interest sake, I'm going, again, in that sort of darning pattern, I'm going against what I did the first time, under instead of over instead of under. And again, I might anchor these to make them a little sturdier. You could also run embroidery floss or other thread up in there. You could go all kinds of crazy. Let's see, I'm going to bring out the piece again that they did at the office. So you can see what they did here is they used the strips and then used embroidery floss to sort of make it even fancier. You can also see here that they ran a line of embroidery floss away from the rip to sort of stabilize the fabric. That's also a good idea for a treatment like this. If I'm doing the patch like we did before, I'm not so worried about stabilizing the edge because the patch is going to hold that all to place. But for something like this, where we're weaving, I just noticed this. I really like the idea of getting that running stitch all the way around the outside to keep that fabric stable while we're messing with the inside. You could also put beads on this. I really, the opportunities are endless. We got a little heart down here, and like I pointed out, the arrow. One of the things I think is particularly cool about this patch, the contrasting color of the thread. You can see they utilize the pattern of the fabric, so that contrasting color almost looks like it was part of the fabric, right? So that's pretty cool too. I like the idea that they got one stitch in the center of every box to use the pattern of the fabric they were using to patch, to use it as part of the visual look and not just ignore the fact that it exists. There's one here. I wanted to show you this one too, which I like. This is a round patch. Again, a little difficult to see in this angle, but you can see they did round stitching instead of trying to go in neat rows like we did on our square patch. They did a spiral stitch. They started on the inside and went round and round and round and round and round until they got to the outside. And this is what I'm talking about. The fabric's going to fray, but that's okay. You don't want to stitch right up to the end because you don't want your stitching to pull out. And you can always go patch some more. Here's our half crosses. It's got some running stitch in between. Again, I did not do this particular jacket. It was done at the office, but I love it. And I think they did some really clever stuff with it. If you look at this one, they have stitches going this way, but also stitches going this way. So instead of little rows like we had, they almost have little boxes. You could change your colors and do a plaid. You could go nuts. So we just have a couple of minutes left. So Bianca, if we have any questions, now is the chance. And
Sure.
I'm going to just keep showing you interesting things while you're asking.
Awesome. Carol is wondering if you ever use fray check, or maybe how you'd incorporate that into a project like this.
The thing that I do not like about fray check for jeans and shirts is, in my experience, and I used to work on Broadway and I dressed a lot of Broadway people and a lot of dancers, fray check when it dries can be a little scratchy. It's almost like a clear nail polish sort of a product, and so it can itch. So I don't use fray check a lot. I'm more likely to do what we did here and use, the other thing I didn't point out, but I think is relevant to this conversation, is these are all cottons. The fat quarters that we have at Michael's, those are 100% cotton. Using the cotton product sort of lets it soften and age and do its own thing, which I kind of like the idea of. I like that soft, you know, I'm an elderly hippie, I guess. I like the, and even the button and craft thread, it's polycore, but it does have cotton in it. So it's going to give you a soft look. My experience with fray check is that it's crunchy. And much like clear nail polish, if you were say you were going to fray check a whole line, it can crack with wear. So there are instances in which I use fray check, but they are few and far between. But that is personal preference. That is not a slam on the fray check company. I just, in my experience, I used to have dancers whining that they could feel it. So I don't use it very often. Anything else, Bianca?
We're also wondering, so when you're finished, do you just cut the edge of the patch close to your stitching?
Yes, but again, not super close. I don't want to be right on that stitching. I want to give it some room to fray. Let's look at this one. I think this is pretty easy to see. See, we've got a good 1/8 of an inch in here. So even though that's starting to fray and soften up, my stitching is still stable. So I wouldn't go right up to the edge of the stitching, right? Because then eventually what's going to happen is that stitching is going to pull out. But this jean jacket looks like it's had some wear, you know what I mean? Which again, I like, but you can see that the edges are a little frayed. If you get a thing like this where you've got a long string hanging off, you've got two choices. Sometimes you can just pull them out, but otherwise you can just cut them. Not a big deal. You know what I mean? It's part of the look of the piece that you're making. We do have coming up a hand embroidery class coming up very soon. that we could also use to embellish our clothes. So I hope you come back and join me for that. And Bianca, I guess I'm going to let you wrap it up.
Awesome. Yeah. A lot of great feedback here in the chat. Thank you everybody for joining us this evening. You can find Mary Beth Temple at Hooked for Life, and you can find more instructions like these also on michaels.com/classes, and you can visit us at yarnspirations.com as well.
And if you want me to see the piece that you're working on, or you need some hands-on tips, please follow me on Instagram. It's hooked4life LLC, and that is monitored. So if you message me there, I will eventually see it. But thank you so much for joining me tonight. I appreciate it. I hope to see you again.